AITA for revealing the $68,400 I contributed after my dad praised my sister instead. I'm Anna, 41, and in my family, being the responsible daughter mostly meant I was expected to solve problems quietly and then take a joke about it later. Ben and I have been married for 12 years. We have a 9-year-old daughter, and even she had started noticing the comments my dad made about how much I supposedly still owed my parents. For a long time I told myself those comments were just my dad's pride talking. Martin, my father, is 69 and has never been comfortable with needing help. He'd rather fix something 3 times himself than admit he couldn't afford to replace it once. My mom, Elaine, is 67 and has always handled conflict by smoothing it over, changing the subject, or quietly moving pieces around so nobody has to have the uncomfortable conversation. This family dynamic is important because 9 years ago my parents really did help me. Ben and I went through a financially tight period. It wasn't dramatic. We weren't homeless or facing some huge catastrophe. We had a string of expenses hit too close together, and our savings weren't enough to absorb all of it. My parents offered to lend us $18,000. There was no complicated contract. My dad wrote down the amount, I made regular payments, and I paid the loan off in 18 months. After the last payment, he emailed me. The email was only a few lines. I remembered the last one because it had made me feel relieved at the time. That makes us even. Don't keep worrying about it. I kept the email, but not because I expected to need proof one day. I keep old emails. That's it. For years after that, the loan was mostly just part of our family history. My parents had helped me when I needed it, I had paid them back, and I remained grateful. If my dad teased me about having once needed help, I usually let it go because the basic fact underneath the joke was true. They had been there for me. 4 years ago, Dad retired. Within a few months, Mom started making comments about how much harder it was to keep their normal monthly expenses where they wanted them. Their basic bills were covered, but the margin was thinner than they were used to. Insurance had gone up. Repairs seemed to come in clusters. Dad was adjusting badly to having less flexibility. One afternoon, Mom called me and said they were coming up about $1,200 short if they wanted to keep everything running the way it had before. I remember sitting at my kitchen table with a grocery receipt beside me and asking, "Is this a temporary thing? Or are you asking me to help every month?" She said, "Just for a while. Until your father settles into retirement, and we figure out what everything actually costs." I talked to Ben that night. He didn't object. In fact, he was the one who reminded me how much my parents had helped us years earlier. "We can do it for a while," he said. "As long as we're clear with ourselves that this isn't another loan." It wasn't a loan. Nobody called it one. I set up a $1,200 monthly transfer to my mom. Came out on the same date every month. First, I noticed it every time. I get the notification and think, okay, that's done. After a few months, it became background noise, like the electric bill or the mortgage. Money left our account, Mom texted, "Thank you," sometimes, and life kept moving. A year after I started sending the money, my younger sister Rachel moved back in with our parents. Rachel is 35. Her marriage had ended, and the divorce left her with a messier financial situation than she'd expected. She moved into my parents' house, intending for it to be temporary. That arrangement ended up benefiting my parents in ways I couldn't. Rachel drove Mom to appointments when Dad didn't want to drive at night. She picked up groceries when they needed heavy things. She called plumbers, waited around for repair people, carried boxes up from the basement, changed filters Dad forgot about, and sat with Mom when she was anxious about something she didn't want to explain over the phone. There were times I was genuinely thankful Rachel was there. I could not do what she was doing on a daily basis. I could visit, call, help with money, handle things from a distance, and show up for important events. But I was not the person hearing the faucet drip at 11 p.m. or driving Mom somewhere at 6:30 in the morning because she didn't want Dad to know she was nervous. Rachel was. I never denied that. The problem was that Dad slowly turned the difference between us into a ranking system. First, it was little things. Rachel actually shows up. Or Rachel doesn't ask what something costs. She just helps. Sometimes he'd say it when I had asked a completely practical question, like whether a repair had already been scheduled or if they wanted me to order something online. Once, after I asked Mom how long she thought they'd need the monthly help because Ben and I were reviewing our budget, she got quiet. Your father hates feeling dependent, she said. Don't make him talk about it. I didn't ask him to talk about it. I know. I'm just saying. He takes it personally. That became the pattern. I sent money. We didn't talk about the money because talking about it embarrassed Dad. Then Dad made jokes about the money because apparently jokes did not count as talking about it. At one family dinner he said, Anna's still paying us back one installment at a time. I looked at him and said, Dad, I paid that loan off years ago. He laughed. Same difference. Family money. My Aunt Linda, Dad's younger sister, was sitting 2 seats away. She smiled like it was an old family joke. I should have corrected it more strongly then. I didn't. Part of it was that I didn't want to turn dinner into an accounting discussion. Part of it was that Rachel really was doing more hands-on work than I was, and I had enough guilt about that to make me easy to silence. And part of it was something I did not fully admit to myself until much later. I hated the idea of being ungrateful. My parents had loaned us $18,000 when we needed it. Even after I had paid every dollar back, some part of me still treated gratitude like a balance that could never quite hit zero. Dad knew that. Maybe Mom did too. The monthly transfer continued. By then, Ben had stopped asking whether we could afford it and started asking when it would end. There's a difference, he told me one night, between helping your parents and building their budget around the assumption that we will always fill the gap. I got defensive. They helped us. We paid them back. I know. Then why do you always say it like we didn't? I didn't have a good answer. Around 8 months before my parents' anniversary dinner, Mom called me about a foundation and drainage issue at the house. She sounded stressed. She said there was water getting where it shouldn't, that it had to be dealt with before it caused bigger problems, and that the total was going to be around $10,800. I asked if Dad knew. She said yes. I asked if insurance covered any of it. She said no. Then she did something that had become normal by then. She gave me the number and waited. I said, okay, send me what you have. She said she would, but she also said the contractor needed a deposit quickly, and they didn't have enough room in the checking account to float it. So I transferred $10,800 to her. I added a note to the transfer, foundation/drainage. A few weeks later, Mom forwarded me an email from the company saying the work had been completed. I opened it on my phone while standing in the grocery store. I saw the words about the drainage correction and foundation work being finished. I saw that the balance was paid. I did not look carefully at the amount. That detail matters because when I later found the number, it wasn't some mysterious invoice that magically appeared. It had been sitting in my email the whole time. I just hadn't looked. Around that same period, Rachel mentioned that she'd finally gotten caught up on her car. Her car had been a recurring source of stress since the divorce. She needed it, especially because she drove our parents around so often, and she'd been behind enough that Mom had worried about it more than once. At the time, I was happy for her. I didn't connect it to anything. 6 weeks before my parents' anniversary, Mom called again. This time it was plumbing. She said there was a problem that could become expensive if they waited and that she needed $7,500. I was making dinner when she called. I remember holding the phone between my shoulder and ear while trying to keep something from burning. $7,500 for what, exactly? I asked. Pipes. They found more than they expected. Do you have the quote? There was a short pause. Not a dramatic pause. Just long enough that I noticed it. I can get it. Okay. Send it to me, and I'll pay the company directly. Mom got offended immediately. Since when do I need to prove a repair to my own daughter? You don't need to prove anything. I just want to know what we're paying for. We. I set the spoon down. Mom, yes. We. Ben and I. She went quiet. Then she said, I don't like the way you're making this sound. I told her I wasn't accusing her of anything. I said $7,500 was a lot of money and direct payment seemed easier. She told me she'd call me back. She didn't. That night Ben asked what happened. I told him. He said, good. I said, good what? Good that you asked for the quote. You say that like I did something brave. No. I say it like it should have been normal from the beginning. That annoyed me because I knew he was right. The next day Rachel called. Not Mom. Rachel. She opened with, "What's going on with you and Mom?" She asked me for $7,500. Yeah, for the plumbing. I asked for the quote. Rachel exhaled in that sharp way she does when she's already frustrated. Why are you treating Mom like she needs permission? I'm not. It sounds like you are. I said I'd pay the company directly. That's still controlling. I didn't raise my voice, but I felt myself getting angry. Rachel, if somebody asks me for $7,500 for a bill, I don't think it's unreasonable to see the bill. You're not here. You don't know what they're dealing with. That landed exactly where she intended it to. Because she was right about one thing. I wasn't there every day. I said, "That doesn't mean I don't get to ask what money is for." Rachel replied, "You always make everything sound like a transaction." That line bothered me for days because it sounded so much like Dad. A few days later, Aunt Linda called about the anniversary dinner. She was helping coordinate the food and wanted to know whether Ben and I were bringing our daughter or getting a sitter. We talked for maybe 10 minutes about normal family logistics. Then, almost as an aside, she said, "Your dad says you're getting difficult about the money. How much longer are you paying them back anyway?" I thought I'd misheard her. Paying them back for what? There was a pause. The money they loaned you. Years ago. I stopped walking. I had been putting laundry away while we talked. I remember standing there with one of Ben's t-shirts in my hand. "Linda, I paid that back 9 years ago." She sounded confused. "Your dad said you've been making payments." "I've been helping them with expenses." That's not how he described it. How did he describe it? She hesitated. Like you were still making them whole. That phrase sounded so much like something Dad would say that I knew she wasn't making it up. I asked her who else thought that. She said, "I don't know, Anna. It's not like we had a family meeting about it." Which was fair. Then she added, "I just thought that was the arrangement." After we hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed for a while. The first thing I did was search my email. I used my dad's name, then loan, then even. The old message came up. It was dated about 7.5 years earlier. There it was. "That makes us even. Don't keep worrying about it." I read it twice. Then I logged into our bank account. I filtered transfers to my mother. 48 monthly transfers of $1,200. $57,600. Then the separate $10,800 transfer for the foundation and drainage work. Total, $68,400. I stared at the screen for a few minutes. I did not feel some huge cinematic rush of betrayal. I felt irritated with myself first, because I had let the arrangement become so automatic that I had never added it up. Then I thought about Linda asking how much longer I was paying them back. I thought about Dad joking that I was still paying in installments. I thought about Mom telling me not to make Dad feel dependent. I searched my email for the foundation work. The forwarded message from Mom came up. This time I opened the attachment and actually looked at the amount. $4,250. I checked the email chain to make sure I wasn't looking at just one part of the job. There was no second invoice attached. The description matched what Mom had described. Drainage correction. Foundation repair. Completed. Paid. $4,250. I had sent $10,800. I closed the laptop. There was a coffee mug in the sink from that morning. I washed it, dried my hands, walked back to the table. Then I opened the laptop again because I genuinely thought there must be something I had missed. There wasn't. I called Mom. She answered on the third ring. "Hi, honey. Was the foundation repair really $10,800? Silence. Then, "Why are you going back through old bills? Was it?" "It was more complicated than one invoice." "Okay, where's the rest?" "Anna, where did the rest go?" She lowered her voice. "Your father is right here. Then go somewhere else." I don't like this tone. I almost apologized. That was my reflex with her. If she said I was being harsh, I immediately wanted to soften everything. Instead I said, "Aunt Linda thinks I still owe you money. Mom didn't answer. I asked, "Why does Aunt Linda think I still owe you money?" "Your father has his way of explaining things." "Is his way true?" "This is exactly why I hate talking about money with you." That almost made me laugh, but I didn't. "They became numbers when you gave me a number and told me what it was for." She said, "We're not doing this while your father is sitting 10 feet away. Then call me when you can." She hung up. An hour later I got a voicemail. I still have no idea whether she left it because she thought she could explain herself better without me interrupting or because Dad wasn't nearby anymore. Knowing Mom, probably both. The voicemail was long. She started by saying she loved me and that she was upset I was turning family help into an audit. Then she admitted the foundation work had cost $4,250. She said there had been money left after the repair. That wording stuck with me. Money left. As if it had simply materialized after the contractor happened to charge less. She said Rachel had been behind on personal debts and was terrified about losing her car. She said Rachel needed the car because she drove them to appointments, picked up groceries, and handled things Dad couldn't always handle. So Mom had given Rachel the remaining $6,550. Then came the part that changed the entire issue for me. Mom said, "I knew if I asked you to help Rachel directly, you might start asking questions about her bills, and she was already embarrassed. I thought if you were willing to help us, then helping her keep the car was also helping us." She paused. Then she said, "And your father knows you paid back that old loan." "Of course he knows. He just hates people thinking we're depending on you now. It was easier to let people think you were still making us whole than to embarrass your father." There was more after that. She told me not to make this bigger than it needed to be. She said the money had stayed in the family. She said Rachel had not wasted it. She said Dad had worked his whole life and retirement had been harder on his pride than anyone understood. At one point she said, "I was trying to keep everyone afloat." The voicemail ended with her asking me not to tell Rachel she'd explained all of it. I listened to it once. Then I listened again. Ben came into the room while it was playing the second time. He didn't say anything until it ended. Then he asked, "Does Rachel know?" "I don't know." "Are you going to ask her?" "Yes." He sat down across from me. "Before the anniversary?" "Yes." "Good." I looked at him. He said, "If she doesn't know what your mom did, she shouldn't find out in a room full of relatives." That ended up matching. I asked Rachel to meet me 2 days later. We met at a quiet coffee shop where neither of us was likely to stay longer than necessary. She arrived already guarded. "Mom said you're upset. Did Mom give you money after the foundation repair?" Rachel looked at me for a second. "Some." "How much?" "Why?" "How much?" She looked away. $6,000 something. $6,550? Her expression changed slightly. "Probably. I don't remember the exact amount." "Did you know it came from me?" "I knew Mom had money left after the repair." "That's not what I asked." Rachel leaned back. "I knew you helped them with the repair." "Did you know she asked me for $10,800? "No." "Did you know the repair cost $4,250? "No." She stared at me. "Wait, what are you saying?" "I'm saying Mom asked me for $10,800 as if that was the repair cost. Then she gave you $6,550. Rachel's face tightened. "She told me the contractor came in under what they expected. The invoice was already $4,250. That's what she forwarded to me." Rachel rubbed her forehead. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then she went right back to being defensive. "I didn't ask her to lie to you. I didn't say you did. You came here acting like I stole your money. I asked what you knew. Because you think I'm some kind of freeloader. I don't." She gave me a look that said she didn't believe me. I said, "You've done a lot for Mom and Dad." "Yeah, I have." "I know." "You don't know. That's the problem." There it was. Rachel started listing examples. Not dramatically, just with the accumulated resentment of somebody who had been keeping her own score while criticizing me for keeping mine. She was the one who took Mom to an early appointment when Dad's back hurt. She was the one who sat at the house waiting for a repair person who gave a 6-hour window. She was the one Dad called when he couldn't find something important. She was the one who picked up prescriptions. "You get to go home after dinner," she said. "I'm still there when something breaks." I let that sit. Then I said, "I never said what you do doesn't count. You send money." "Yes. And everybody acts like you're the responsible one." "Everybody." "You know what I mean." "No, actually I don't." Rachel shook her head. "You got to build your life and leave." I moved back after my marriage fell apart, and suddenly I'm everybody's backup plan. Mom needs something, Rachel. Dad needs something, Rachel. Somebody has to wait at the house, Rachel. Then you send a check and get to feel like you did your part. That hurt because there was truth in it. Not the part about me just writing a check and congratulating myself, but the part about her being trapped by availability. I said, "I never said money was the same as being here. You're the one acting like one of us has to cancel out the other." She looked down at the table. I asked, "Did you know Dad tells people I'm still paying back the old loan?" That changed the conversation. Rachel didn't answer right away. "Rachel, I've heard him say it. You know it's not true. I knew you were helping them." "That's not the question." She looked irritated. "Fine. Yes. I knew the old loan wasn't what the monthly money was for. Did you ever correct him?" "No." "Why?" "Because every conversation in this family somehow becomes about money with you." I almost snapped back, but I stopped. "That's not an answer," she said. "Because I was tired, Anna." "Tired of what?" "Of Dad talking like you're the one holding everything together when you're not here." I stared at her. "He tells people I don't help. He says you make everything transactional. He tells people I'm paying a debt." She didn't deny it. Then she said, "And you're proving his point right now." I asked, "How?" "You have bank statements, emails, numbers. You always have a file." "I have those because I've been asked for money." "You act like writing a check gives you veto power." "No. I think being lied to gives me the right to stop writing it." That was the closest our conversation got to a clean line. Most of it was messier. Rachel insisted she hadn't known Mom had inflated the repair amount. I believed her. Her reaction didn't look like somebody getting caught in a lie. It looked like somebody realizing she had been used as part of one. But she still wouldn't apologize for letting Dad's "Anna is repaying us" story stand. Eventually she said, "I wasn't going to correct him in front of everyone and make Mom and Dad look like they needed you." That sentence told me she understood more than she wanted to admit. Before we left, I asked her one last thing. If Mom had asked me directly, "Rachel is behind and needs help keeping the car. Will you give her $6,550? What do you think I would have said?" Rachel looked at me for a long time. "I don't know." "Neither do I." And that was the whole point. Mom had decided my answer for me. That night, I canceled the recurring $1,200 transfer. The next payment was scheduled to go out after the anniversary dinner. I canceled it before anything public happened. I wanted that decision to be separate from whatever happened at the dinner. I also told Mom by text that I would not be sending the $7,500 for the plumbing. If there was a real repair, she could send me the written estimate and I would decide whether I wanted to contribute. She replied, "This is exactly what your father was afraid of." I did not respond. For about 24 hours, I decided I wasn't going to the anniversary dinner at all. Ben said he would support that. Then he added, "But if you still want a relationship with them, staying home is also a decision." I asked him what he meant. "I mean, you don't have to go. But don't tell yourself avoiding it is neutral." He was right, which was becoming an annoying theme. I decided to go. I told myself I would not bring up the money. I saved 3 things on my phone anyway. A screenshot showing the recurring transfers and the $10,800 transfer. Dad's old email. Mom's voicemail. Ben saw me organizing them. Planning something? No. He gave me a look. "I mean it. I'm not bringing it up. But I'm not sitting there if Dad starts saying things that aren't true. That's different. I know. He didn't tell me to delete anything. The anniversary dinner was at my parents' house. They had family photos rotating on the TV in the living room. Rachel had put the slideshow together. There were pictures from their wedding, old vacations, school events, birthdays, Christmas mornings, our childhood. Then newer photos with grandkids and extended family. It was nice. That's part of why what happened felt worse. Nothing about the evening started ugly. People ate. Dad was in a good mood. Mom was busy making sure everyone had enough. Rachel moved through the house doing the thing she is genuinely good at, noticing what needed to be done before somebody asked. At one point I watched her refill Mom's water, and then carry a stack of plates into the kitchen while Dad kept talking. She was helping. I knew that. After dinner before dessert, Dad stood up with a glass. He thanked everyone for coming and talked about 43 years with Mom. Some of it was sweet. He said marriage was about showing up when things got hard. Then he looked at Rachel. He said, and if there's one person who's understood that better than anyone these last few years, it's Rachel. Rachel smiled. Dad continued. She's always been the one who shows up. No questions, no accounting, no keeping track of what she gets back. I knew where it was going before he said the next part. He looked in my direction. Then he said, she's the only daughter who ever helped this family without keeping score. A few people shifted in their seats. Rachel gave a small, embarrassed laugh, but she was still smiling. I looked at Mom. She would not look at me. I could have stayed quiet. I want to be honest about that. Dad's comment was insulting, but I could have let the toast end, gone home, and stopped the money privately. Instead I asked very calmly, do you mean emotionally or financially too? Dad's face changed. He had a chance right there. He could have said he meant the daily things Rachel did. He could have said both daughters helped in different ways. He could have laughed it off. Instead he said, you know exactly what I mean. I said, I don't think I do. Mom finally looked at me. Anna. Dad put his glass down. Rachel helps because we're family. You always make help sound like an invoice. I said, that's not what I asked. He said, you've been paying back what we did for you and acting like it makes you generous. There it was. Not a joke. Not an implication. A statement. In front of Linda, cousins, family, friends who had known us for years, my husband and my child who was in the other room with some of the younger kids. I asked him, are you saying I still owe you the $18,000? Dad's jaw tightened. I'm saying decent people don't keep a ledger with their parents. Mom said quietly, Anna, not tonight. I looked at her. He's the one who made it part of the toast. Dad said, nobody picked anything. You're the one turning a thank you into a fight. I don't remember making a decision to stand up. I just did. The TV was already connected for the anniversary photos. I asked Rachel for the remote. She stared at me. Why? I need the screen for a minute. She said, Anna, don't. Dad laughed once like he could not believe I was serious. That laugh is probably what pushed me from correcting him to proving it. I connected my phone. The family slideshow disappeared. My banking screen came up. I did not scroll through 4 years of transactions one by one. I had already filtered them. 48 transfers. Same recipient. Same amount. $1,200. Then the separate $10,800 transfer labeled foundation/drainage. I said, that's $57,600 in monthly support over 4 years. Plus $10,800 for the foundation work. Total is $68,400. Dad said, this is unbelievable. Linda leaned forward. But the old loan? I opened Dad's email. I did not read the whole thing. There was almost nothing to read. I said, this is from Dad after the last payment more than 7 years ago. Then I read the line. That makes us even. Don't keep worrying about it. Dad's face went red. Family doesn't keep receipts. That was when I said one of the few things that came out exactly the way I wanted it to. You turned it into a debt. I checked when it ended. Rachel spoke up. I still do most of the actual day-to-day stuff. I looked at her. I know. She stopped. I said, I've never denied that. That mattered to me even then. I did not want to replace Dad's false ranking with my own. But Dad wasn't done. He said, so you sent money. Fine. It was used for the family. That's what family does. That brought me to the line I wish I had handled differently. I looked at Mom. Do you want to explain the foundation money or should I? Mom went pale. Anna, please don't do this. Rachel turned toward her. Explain what? I should have stopped there. I could have said the repair cost $4,250 and Mom had admitted moving the rest. I could have handled the voicemail privately. Instead I said, you can explain it. Mom shook her head. I opened the voicemail. Ben said my name quietly from beside me. I heard him. I played it anyway. I did not play the entire message. I skipped to the part where Mom said the repair had cost $4,250 and that she had given the remaining $6,550 to Rachel. Then came her explanation that Rachel needed the car because she used it for Mom and Dad. Rachel's face changed. She looked at Mom. You told me it was money left after the repair. Mom said, it was. I said, left after a repair that cost $4,250, after you asked me for $10,800. Then the voicemail continued to the part where Mom said Dad knew the old loan had been paid off, and that it was easier to let people think I was still making us whole, than to embarrass him. I stopped it there. Nobody applauded. Nobody dramatically shouted. The room just became uncomfortable in several different directions at once. Linda asked Dad, why did you let me think she was still repaying you? Dad snapped, I didn't discuss private finances with you. Linda said, you literally told me she was still paying you back. One of my cousins said, can we turn the TV off? Another relative asked Mom why she hadn't just asked me if I wanted to help Rachel. Mom said, because I knew what Anna would make it into. I said, you mean a question? Rachel was staring at Mom. Did Dad know you gave me that money? Mom hesitated. Dad turned toward her. What money? That was the first moment I realized Dad had not known the entire second part. Mom said, Martin, not now. He said, what money? Rachel said, the money you gave me for the car. Dad looked at Mom. You used Anna's repair money for Rachel? Mom said, it was helping us too. Rachel drives us everywhere. Dad's anger shifted so quickly that it almost made me laugh, but there was nothing funny about it. He had been perfectly willing to blur my money into family money when he thought he controlled the story. The second he realized Mom had redirected thousands without fully telling him, suddenly details mattered. I didn't point that out. I was too tired by then. Linda turned to me. I think you're right that he shouldn't have said that about you, but this should not be happening in front of everybody. I said, I know. And I did. Another relative said something similar. Someone else told Dad he had brought me into it first. Nobody formed a clean side. That was probably the most realistic part of the night. People were embarrassed. Some were angry at Dad. Some were angry at Mom. Some thought I was justified. Some thought playing the voicemail was too much. Most just wanted dessert to appear so everyone could pretend the evening could recover. It didn't. Ben and I left before dessert. Our daughter had not heard the voicemail itself, which I was grateful for. She knew something had happened because children always know, but Ben got her into the car without explaining it there. The ride home was quiet until she fell asleep. Then Ben said, canceling the money was a boundary. Playing the voicemail was retaliation. I turned toward him. He lied about me in front of everyone. I know. He made me sound like I was some ungrateful person still paying off a debt. I know. And Mom took money from me under a false reason. I know that too. Then what exactly are you saying? He looked at the road for a few seconds. I'm saying you had every right to correct him. You had every right to show the transfers. You had every right to show the email. I'm saying you also wanted the voicemail to hurt. I was immediately defensive. I wanted the truth out. Both can be true. I didn't answer. Because he was right. I had spent years swallowing comments because I didn't want to make Dad uncomfortable. I had spent years letting Mom tell me that talking honestly about money was rude, while accepting money from me was not. By the time Dad made that toast, I didn't just want to correct a fact. I wanted him to feel what it was like to lose control of the story. I wanted Mom to feel what it was like to have a private explanation exposed after using privacy as a shield. I wanted Rachel to see that the thing everyone treated as invisible had a dollar amount. That does not mean the information was false. It does mean my motive wasn't as clean as I wanted it to be. The next month, the $1,200 transfer did not go out. Mom texted me 2 days after the usual date. Did something happen with the transfer? I stared at the message. Then I wrote, no, I canceled it. She called immediately. I did not answer. She left another voicemail, but I didn't listen to it until later that evening. This one was shorter. She said they had bills arranged around the money, and that stopping it without notice was punitive. I sent one text back. I told you before the anniversary that I would not send more money without a clear purpose. The monthly transfer is over. She replied, your father is furious. I did not respond. The plumbing request also disappeared. I never received a $7,500 estimate. A few weeks later, Mom sent me a photo of a much smaller invoice for work that had actually been done. She did not ask me to pay it. My parents did not lose their house. They did not go bankrupt. Nothing dramatic happened financially. They had retirement income. They could cover their basic needs. What they lost was the cushion that let them avoid saying no to themselves and to Rachel. They cut some optional expenses. They postponed a couple of purchases. Mom started comparing prices more carefully. Dad complained about all of it as if the changes were evidence that I had abandoned them. Rachel started contributing to household expenses. Not a huge amount at first, but enough that it was no longer understood that her caregiving automatically canceled every financial responsibility she had. Mom also stopped quietly helping with Rachel's personal debts. That created its own tension. Rachel called me once about a month after the anniversary, because Mom had told her she needed to start paying a fixed amount toward groceries and utilities. Rachel said, I guess you got what you wanted. I almost took the bait. Instead I asked, what do you think I wanted? For everyone to see what you do? No. She laughed without humor. Come on. I wanted Dad to stop telling people I was paying a debt I already paid. And now Mom and Dad are acting like every grocery run has to be documented. That's between you and them. It wasn't before. Because my money was covering part of it. That ended the call quickly. Dad did not speak to me for almost 2 months. Mom sent texts. At first, every apology had a defense attached. I'm sorry you felt deceived, but I was trying to protect Rachel. I'm sorry I didn't explain the repair better, but I knew you'd be upset. I'm sorry your father said those things, but you know how proud he is. I stopped answering them. Not forever. Just until the sentence could stand without a but. Ben and I also had a rougher stretch than I expected. He did not think I should restart the money. He never suggested that. But he was bothered by the dinner. One night after our daughter went to bed, he said, you keep talking about what your dad did, and you're right. But you're skipping over your part. What part? The part where you brought your mom's voicemail loaded on your phone. I brought it in case they lied. You expected them to. Wouldn't you? Probably. Then what's your point? His point was that I had gone to the dinner hoping at least a little for a chance to stop being quiet. That was hard for me to admit because I wanted my decision to feel completely reactive. It wasn't. I had canceled the transfer before the dinner. That part was a boundary. I had gathered the records before the dinner. That part was preparation. But there had also been a piece of me imagining Dad making one more comment and me finally being able to say, no, here's exactly what happened. I had never thought of myself as somebody who waits for a public opening. Apparently I had become one. Aunt Linda called me about 3 weeks after the anniversary. She said, I still think you shouldn't have played that voicemail. I said, Ben agrees with you. Smart man. I laughed for the first time about any of it. Then she got serious. But your father did lie to me. Yes. I don't know if he thinks it wasn't a lie because he never gave me a spreadsheet or something. He knew what you believed. I know. That was enough. Linda did not suddenly become my advocate. She still thought I had gone too far at the dinner, but she also stopped participating in Dad's version of events. Apparently he had tried to tell her later that I'd always been sensitive about money. She told him, "That's not the same issue, Martin." That was the first consequence he seemed to care about. Not losing the $1,200. Losing control of the family explanation. When Dad finally called me, almost 2 months after the anniversary, he did not apologize. He said, "Have you had enough time to calm down?" I almost hung up. Instead I said, "I'm calm. You humiliated us in our own house. You told people I was still paying you back. That's not what this is about. It is for me. You brought bank statements into our anniversary. You brought my finances into your toast." He sighed hard. "Rachel was the one here. I know. You don't act like you know. I have never said Rachel doesn't help you. You don't need to say it. You act like money makes everything equal. No. You act like if I don't do what Rachel does, what I do doesn't count." He got quiet. Then he said, "You always make help sound like an invoice." I said, "I'm not discussing this if we're going back to slogans." That annoyed him. He asked if I was really going to stop helping over one misunderstanding. I said, "It wasn't one misunderstanding." He said, "Your mother made a mistake." I asked, "Do you still tell people I owe you money?" He snapped, "That's not the point. It is for me." We did not get anywhere after that. I ended the call when his voice got louder. For the next few months, our relationship became what I would call polite and distant. Birthday text. Short call. A few family events where we talked about safe topics. I did not cut him off entirely. I also stopped trying to win him back. That was new. Rachel contacted me more thoughtfully a few weeks later. She asked if we could talk. Not at Mom and Dad's. Not in a group. Just us. We met for lunch. She looked tired. She said, "I want to say something and I don't want you to interrupt until I finish." I nodded. She said, "I knew Dad was wrong when he said you were still paying back the loan." I waited. I knew the monthly money was help. I kept waiting. I didn't correct him because I was angry. At me. At you, at them, at everything. She looked down at her plate. I was angry that you got praised for being responsible while I got stuck being available. I said, "Dad was not praising me. You know what I mean. You were always the one who had it together. I was the one who moved home after a divorce. Every time Mom said, 'Anna helped with this,' I heard, 'Why can't you be more like her?' I had never heard that part directly before. I said, and every time Dad said, 'Rachel shows up,' I heard, 'Why can't you be more like her?' Rachel looked at me. For once, neither of us argued. Then I said, 'Being responsible meant nobody thought I needed to be treated fairly.' She nodded slowly. 'Being available meant everyone thought my time belonged to them.' That did not erase anything. I asked her, 'Why didn't you apologize when I confronted you before the dinner?' She said, 'Because I still thought you were coming after me for the money Mom gave me.' I wasn't. I know that now." She paused. Then she said, "I am sorry I let Dad keep saying you were paying them back. I knew it wasn't true." That was the first direct apology I got from anyone. Then she added, "But playing Mom's voicemail in front of everybody was messed up." I said, "I know." She seemed surprised. I said, "I still think Dad needed correcting in the same room where he lied. I don't think I needed to play the voicemail." Rachel said, "You embarrassed me with something I didn't even know the full story about." I know. I'm not saying I was innocent in everything. I know. That was about as close as we came to peace. We did not hug. We did not suddenly become close sisters. But after that, she stopped treating every boundary I set as proof I didn't care. And I stopped treating every complaint she made about caregiving as an excuse. Mom took longer. For months she tried to apologize without actually giving up her reasons. The reasons were always the same. Rachel needed the car. Dad needed his pride. The family needed peace. I was doing well enough to absorb it. That last one bothered me the most. I knew you could handle it, had been used my whole life as a compliment. Eventually I understood it often meant, so I chose you to carry more. About 4 months after the anniversary dinner, Mom sent me a text. It was short. I lied about what the money was for. I decided you would say yes instead of asking you. That was wrong. That was it. No explanation. No mention of Rachel's car. No mention of Dad. No but. I read it several times. Then I called her. We met the following week. She looked older to me than she had 4 months earlier. I don't mean physically transformed, just tired in a way I had not allowed myself to notice because I had been so angry. We talked for over an hour. She apologized again. She admitted that asking me directly whether I'd help Rachel would have required accepting that I might say no. She said she had convinced herself that because the money ultimately helped Rachel keep doing things for them, she was only reallocating family resources. I said, they weren't family resources. They were mine until I chose to give them. She nodded. That was probably the most important thing she did. She did not argue. I told her I was not restarting the $1,200 monthly transfer. She asked, ever? I said, I'm not setting up another automatic payment. What if we need help? Then ask. And you'll want to see bills. If it's about a bill, yes. She did not like that. I could see it. But she said, okay. I told her if there was a real emergency I might help. I might not. If I did, I would decide based on what the situation actually was, not based on a vague number or an old sense of obligation. She said, your father will take that badly. I said, Dad gets to have feelings about my boundaries. Mom almost smiled at that. Not because she liked it. Because she knew I wasn't going to negotiate it. Dad still has not given me the kind of apology Mom eventually gave me. He has never said, I let people believe something false because I was embarrassed to need your help. He has said versions of, I could have worded the toast better. I didn't mean it the way you took it. You know I appreciate what you've done. And once, I shouldn't have brought up the old loan. That last one was probably the closest he has come. But even then he followed it with, you shouldn't have turned the whole dinner into a trial. So we are not fixed. Maybe we never fully will be. Rachel still lives with my parents for now. She contributes to the household. She still drives Mom to appointments and handles more of the daily tasks than I do. That has not changed. What changed is that I no longer let anyone use that fact to erase what I contributed. And I also no longer use money to quiet the part of me that worries I am a bad daughter if I say no. The anniversary dinner is still a sore spot. Ben and I don't argue about it anymore, but I know his opinion has not changed much. He thinks I was right to stop the money. He thinks I was right to correct Dad publicly because Dad made the accusation publicly. He thinks playing Mom's voicemail crossed a line. I think he is probably right about that last part. I don't regret exposing the lie. I do regret that I used the most painful piece of proof available when less would have been enough. That distinction matters to me now. There was one small moment recently that made the whole change feel real. For 4 years, the $1,200 transfer had gone out on the same date every month. I rarely thought about it toward the end. It was just something that happened. A few months after Mom and I met, that date came around again. I noticed it because I was looking at our calendar before bed. For a second, I had the old automatic thought that $1,200 had just left our account. Then I remembered it hadn't. I checked anyway. No transfer. Nothing scheduled. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't screenshot the balance. I didn't text Rachel or Mom. I closed the app, put my phone down and went to finish loading the dishwasher. For the first time in years, that date was just another date. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.